Tonight on Philly Sports Spotlight, it's the eve of Chip Kelly's first NFL draft, and former Eagle Ken Dunek stops by to give us his thoughts on who the Birds' new head coach should take with their first-round selection. Meanwhile, off the field, the Eagles' iMobile continues to bring things into focus for area children, and we'll introduce you to Hugh Campbell, who proves that once again, age is nothing but a number. Good evening, welcome to Philly Sports Spotlight. I'm Phil Andrews, and let's get right to the task at hand. And that, of course, is the annual process of trying to figure out what the heck the Eagles are going to do with the fourth pick in the first round of tomorrow night's NFL draft. Now, I will tell you that newly minted head coach Chip Kelly just finished his first official full-team off-season minicamp, and from all indications, many of the players who were on the Birds roster last year and under Andy Reid are finding Coach Kelly's version of camp up-tempo and refreshing. Now comes a chance to grab a good player with the fourth overall pick in tomorrow night's draft.
I want to come out of it with the best players, hopefully my goal is that we have a lot more drafts, so you could say it's your signature draft if it's your only draft. So I plan on being here more than 1 year. So our whole goal is can we improve this football team? And that's it. But I don't look at it as this is a defining moment of what we're doing. And when people look back 10 years, 20 years, who was the pick and all those other things that I'm not that deep, I can tell you that. So we're just trying to get the best player we can.
Well, certainly you hope you're getting some contributions, but when we look at this pick, at the fourth pick in the draft, we want to know 3 years from now what we're getting, at least as we sit here today, what we project that player to be. So if we thought that we're getting a dominant top player at his position, but maybe it's a position that we have some depth and he wouldn't start from day one, that wouldn't preclude us from taking him.
And, of course, now joining us on the set of Philly Sports Spotlight, former Eagles tight end and Jersey Man Magazine editor-in-chief, Ken Dunek. And, Ken, what do you make of the pre-draft banter from Coach Kelly and Mr. Roseman?
Well, the draft is the ultimate poker game when it comes to the NFL. I mean, these guys are all blowing smoke. They're trying to make you believe what they're not going to do. And it's really hard to tell. You need to focus in on the statistics, who did well in the Combine and in the Senior Bowl, and just go with your gut.
Well, the fact that they're picking where they are picking means that you didn't have a good season the year before. So let's take a look at where they are in the actual process of things coming up tomorrow night. Now, our good friend Andy Reid is going to get the number one overall pick. And these are just, when you talk about the critics around the league and different people from ESPN and the NFL, they kind of predict who they think those teams are going to take. As you look at this top five here and you see where the Eagles are, Geno Smith, his name keeps popping up, but there are other players. What do you think of these top five?
Well, those are the consensus top five. Geno Smith's stock is dropping a little bit here as we approach the draft, but I have to tell you, this draft is not top-heavy. It's a deep class, but it's not top-heavy. So my first consideration, even though it pains me because I love the fact that the Birds have number 4, is to trade the pick.
All right, now trade the pick and do what?
Well, you've got a couple teams that have 2 first-rounders. St. Louis has 2 first-round selections, as does Minnesota. You can get some value down there at the lower end of the first round and maybe even get an extra second rounder or 2. And I think that the depth of this draft is really going to go, 4, 5, 6 rounds deep. So if I'm the Birds, and they need to stockpile some players, obviously, right, because of the season they had last year, you might want to go that route.
But what Ken says is true. They need help in a lot of areas, but one position that also keeps coming back is tackle, offensive tackle. They say you can get a tackle, and those guys can play for a long, long time. And there's 3 very good linemen, maybe 4 at the top of this draft. Ken has picked out what he thinks are the cream of the crop when it comes to offensive linemen. Take a look.
Yes, if there's such a thing as a can't-miss prospect in this draft, it's probably one of these 3 guys. I'm looking right now at Eric Fisher, who played at Central Michigan. The knock against him was that he played against subpar competition in the MAC. However, he played one of his best games against Michigan State, of course, Big Ten caliber competition, and then he dominated the Senior Bowl. Yeah. So he's got a great resume. I do think that he'd be fine in the NFL. Luke Jekyll, who is from Texas A&M, has been the consensus number 1 offensive tackle. Big kid, 6'6", 306 from Texas A&M. And having played down at Texas A&M when I played college for Memphis State, that's a very, very rough and crazy place to play. So, and then of course you've got Lane Johnson from Oklahoma, 6'6", 303 pounds, running a 4.69 40. So those are 3 big guys that can move. If you're going to go with talent, I would say that the Eagles should take an offensive tackle of 4.
That's 4.6. That was your 40 back in the day. I know that.
That was for
and Joe-
that was for 30. not
Joe,
40.
Joko, by the way, looks like he's going to be heading to Kansas City. But if this guy's available, you think the Eagles, they need help everywhere. Defensive back, you've got your eye on one guy who seems to be the cream of the crop when it comes to D-backs, and this guy from Alabama, D. Milner.
Yeah, I think if they go defense at number 4, you go with D. Milner. He comes from Alabama, which of course everybody knows about their program. 6 foot, 201 pounds, a 4.35 40. So he can pretty much stay with the burners at wide receiver in the league. And then the other consideration, if you wanted to go D-line, would be Sharif Floyd of Florida, 6'3", 297, runs a 4.87. So I think of those 5 choices, the Eagles, would be well served by picking one of those 5 players.
Yeah, and of course, Sharif Floyd is a local kid, George Washington High School. He was huge in high school. I remember watching him play, just dominated the action. All right. There's also a second round. It's the first and second round in the draft tomorrow. Real quick, you got a couple of consensus picks that you like for second round possibilities?
Yeah, there's some interesting names, and all these 3 players could fall into the second round. Of course, you got Matt Barkley. Now, you talk about Matt Barkley. He was injured for USC last year, and his stock did fall. However, you're talking about a quarterback that was ranked with RG3 and Andrew Luck at the beginning of last year, so you may be getting great value there. E.J. Manuel from Florida State, quarterback, is a guy whose name you're hearing more and more about. 6'5", 237 pounds, runs a 4.59, and that's something the Eagles should consider. And of course, I have to mention a tight end if I'm here from Notre Dame. Tyler Eifert is 6'6", 250, runs a 4.65, and again, Brent Selleck had a bit of a subpar year last year. They may be looking to replace
Well, he had a
him.
bit of a subpar year because he spent most of his time blocking because that offensive line was so bad. Okay, listen, I'm going to ask you to stick around because in the next break or after the break, we're going to talk about the Eagles' schedule coming up. And since we're talking about the draft, I thought that maybe this week we would actually shoot you a draft question concerning the Philadelphia Eagles. And here it is. How many times have the Birds had the overall number 1 pick? That answer coming up a little bit later on in the show. Also still to come, a few words from departing Sixers head coach Doug Collins.